a few resources as well you can tap into, and we'll get right into it. So let me begin first by telling you more about the test. That's how our session will go. I'll tell you a little bit about the test, the content that they will be testing you on, and we will be taking pretty much like an interactive practice test. So you will try to pace yourself, and then we'll be discussing test taking skills and some of the anxiety that is really associated with the test taking. So to begin with, about this subtest in particular, your first resource to start prepping for the Praxis is the ETS website. For this, I'm going to go ahead and send you the link to this so you could follow with me. I'm going to put it in the chat. Please go on this website and let's see what they have in it for us. So this is the link to the ETS website. And can you see my screen, which is
No.
The ETS website? Can you see this with me?
We cannot see it.
Okay, I figured. That's the PowerPoint. And let's see if we can do a new share. Okay, that's the ETS website. Whether you are prepping for the Praxis science or reading or math or social studies, this is where you need to start. They have developed study resources and study plans. And I'd like you to click on the study plan for the science subtest and keep that handy as we go on with the Praxis prep session. The study resources, I'll go over it. You will find that for each content area, they have some videos, some lesson plans that will help you prepare for the Praxis. So this is the first page that you need to start working on as you prep for the science Praxis. Okay, so download the science study sheet and let's really look into them. If you look at the science subtest, it contains 3 major science content. And if you took the science methods course, these are the contents that we'll go over: the earth science, life science, and physical science. And these are some of the major content or categories in the elementary grades, the earth science and life science and physical science. They have allocated certain numbers of questions for each of these categories, and the total number of questions is going to be 55 for a total of 60 minutes, which is really an added bonus for the science Praxis because you get to have more time per question, which is a minute and a little bit over a minute. So you have a total of 55 questions divided into the 3 categories. So these are the questions. So you have, if you want to pace yourself, and this is a very important skill when you take any exam, you have to pace yourself per question so you don't run out of time and you have ample time to go back and revise your answers. So we know how many questions, we know how many minutes per question, and let's go over the overarching ideas. Being that the science content is really vast, it helps that we anchor ourselves to certain content areas. So what I'll do now, I'll go over the study resources that ETS provided and as well the study plan. So let's see. The question or the exam is an interactive computer format. So you're going to be responding to an exam similar to what I have prepared for you. I created this as a poll, so you will be able to look at it and click on your answers, and this is how you post your answers. And once you complete it, you could just move on to the second question. So it's an interactive, you could change your responses, you could move from one question to another, and it's a computer format. On this computer, whenever is necessary, they will allow you to use a calculator, but it's an on-screen calculator. It will pop up whenever there's a need for a calculator, and they would allow it per that question. So there is a possibility that you may be using some of these calculators. So if you are taking any exam, and this is really across the board, I consider myself not a good test taker. But I have kind of modified my habits and I gotten better at it. And this is always done with practice. So don't think just preparing for the praxis would just require you to read the content. You need to actually sit down and take an exam or a test that is comprised of 55 questions, along with the times allocated for each question. So you need to time yourself for 60 minutes and take 55 questions. Read them closely and carefully. Some of the answers may really be embedded in the questions, and you will be surprised sometimes why some question will be an answer to the following question or a later question. So read the questions carefully and be present when you read it. And verify the answers through substitution or elimination. This is really a good skill to use when taking any exam. With science is a little bit more evident as opposed to any other content, social studies as well. Don't try to think outside the limited responses. So it was like, think within these responses that are given. Sometimes they will be the closest to these responses. And of course, use the eliminate or substitution as you go on. So these are like major test taking tips that I just wanted to remind you of. And we will get into the first category, which is earth science. I'm going to go over the content per earth science, and then some questions, then life science, some questions, and then finally the physical science. So this is the science subtest study plan. I have took a snapshot of the study plan, which is under earth science. You have the whole document. You can scroll down and see what actually comes under each of the life science and earth science, and as well the physical science. So let's take an example. The earth science understands the structure of the earth system. That should direct you to studying the earth and the 3 layers of the earth and anything that is surrounding the earth: landform, weather, erosion, etc. So it's going to direct you to where you want to find the information, even though it's really, I understand that it's vast and it's really hard to find it, but these are helpful for us to narrow down where do we need to look for the content. So this is your first prepping action. Do you know the content very well? Go ahead and check it. If not, you could probably find resources to look at it, and you probably need to see other textbooks. I recommend you go back to the science textbooks of 4th grade, 3rd, 4th, 5th grade, and you will find all the information you need regarding that content. If you don't want to have, or you don't have a science textbooks, the ETS listed some lesson plans, and these are really good and targeted lesson plan that would help you go over the content under the earth science. So if you need help to understand the structure of the earth system, the properties of the solid earth, they have listed 3 lessons or sometimes 3 resources. Some of them may be a video or a YouTube video. So click on that and start watching it, take notes, and create a journal of a kind, which I highly recommend per each content. If you're prepping for the science, create a journal, write down the areas that you need help with, write down resources, and don't hesitate to write even content relating to the earth science. Sounds good? Any questions so far? All right, so let's practice. Here is what I'll do. I'm gonna launch a poll, and I'm gonna put the timer, which is 1 minute per question. For the first one, I believe we have 5 questions.
Walking there? In the middle?
Amari? Okay. We have 5 questions, so I'm gonna put the timer for 5 minutes. I'm gonna launch the poll, take a minute to read the question, find the answers, and after 5 minutes, the alarm will go off and I'll stop the poll. And then we will convene and talk about each of these questions. All right, I'm launching the poll now. You should be able to see it, and the timer started. Please begin responding to the questions. Two more minutes. One minute. Try to mark your responses. All right, everyone. All right, let me share the results with you. This is how you all responded to the questions. And we'll go over the answers now shortly. First of all, I'd like to hear from you. How was your time? How did you feel the time was working for you? Was it stressful? Was it comfortable? Share with us how you felt about the time allocated per question.
I was comfortable with the timing.
Yes. Anyone else?
I felt that was enough time.
Exactly. And that's what I wanted you to get. That in terms of time, you will have ample of time to read the questions and go over it. So don't be stressed that I'm not going to be able to complete the whole exam. You will be able to, so take your time and read the questions. Now, what we will be doing together is try to share the tips that I shared with you at the beginning. So this is the first question that you have encountered. Can anyone share with us how they thought of this question and what tips they used in order to answer this question to the best of their ability?
So for me, this question was actually a little confusing. One, I don't like questions like this because it's not necessarily a like specific, topic. It's kind of just like out of all of the things you know about science, which is true. I did choose the first answer, but it was kind of a process of elimination. And I also still wasn't too confident after I picked it because I'm not sure if that's true. But I did know that the moon is not closer to Venus than it is to Earth. So like I kind of started doing process of elimination. And then the certain times of year with Jupiter one, I was figuring it wasn't that because the planets rotate, so they don't get closer or further. And then Mercury is the closest planet to Earth was wrong because it's Mercury, Venus. So like Venus is before Mercury.
Thank you for sharing, Kindle. That was very thorough. And I appreciated the fact that you share with me the fact that I don't like also these questions because they ask you to really think through multiple content areas or categories. True. Your process of elimination was successful, just simply because the correct answer is really the first one. Okay, so let me go over what Kindle was saying. She said the moon is closer to Venus, which is not true. At certain times of year, Jupiter is closer to the sun. Also, we know that this is not good. These are basic facts of astronomy that we learn really in early grades. Mercury is the closest to Earth. Also, this is not true. So by elimination, Kindle was able to say, you know what? A is the correct answer. And it is. So this is the first step that you use, or the first hint that you use when you encounter a question like this that you cannot really find the answer immediately. Let's try the second one. Anyone would like to share how they looked at this question and navigated reading through it and finding the answer? Rachel?
It took me a little bit to figure out. So I was thinking,
Bless
excuse
you.
me. Thank you. So when I was thinking of what would be caused by geothermal heat, I knew right away that glaciers wasn't going to be it because I know glaciers typically involve ice, and tsunamis. I know they involve like the tectonic plates, so I knew that probably wasn't going to be it. And I also knew tornadoes was definitely not caused by geothermal heat. So with the process of elimination, that left me with geysers. So that's what I went with.
Very good. That is the same exact tip was actually successful over here because the correct answer is geysers. And she was correct in explaining why she eliminated the glaciers, the tsunamis, and the tornadoes. And it seems like geysers was the correct answer. Well done, Rachel. Just something I wanted to pinpoint here. Geo means Earth. So every time you see geo, you have to think of Earth. Of course, thermal is heat, so we're talking about the heat that generates from Earth. Okay, just a tip for future reference. All right, third question. Who would like to take a shot at it?
Okay, for this one, I was unsure again. And I
It's fine.
kind of clicked this one just because, okay, so I picked igneous.
Igneous. Okay,
Yeah.
any reason why you chose igneous?
That's like out of all of my science classes that I've taken, that's like the one that stood out to me most when we were talking about volcanic like substances and lava. So
Okay.
I don't even know if that's right though. It could be metamorphic, but I'm not sure. I don't know.
It is actually. You're correct. It is igneous, and you just recalled what you have done in science or been taught in science. So the igneous was something that you could relate to. Let's go over them. Sedimentary. It just when you sediment, you're putting things on top of each other. Okay, which is usually done with sand and you know calcium residues and things like this. Metamorphic is the change from one type to another, and sandstone, we know what sandstone is. So the igneous seems the most probable answer to this question, and you are right. It is an igneous. That's the correct answer. All right, this one. Oh, Amari said it was a familiar word. Yeah, good work on having to work with familiar words as well. That's very helpful. All right, who would like to try this one?
This was also one that I didn't. Honestly, I guess I didn't know any of them.
Well, I tell you something. I think this one we could eliminate two really quickly.
Yeah, which was black hole and supernova.
Very good. So the
Yeah,
rest
like
is the solar eclipse and the lunar eclipse. And I could see why there is a high possibility of making an error here, because if you cannot distinguish between the solar and the lunar, you really don't have any other option but to make an error here. You know what I'm
right.
saying? So
Yeah.
it's like trying to get to the correct answer. But let's remember what we know. What is the solar eclipse? It's actually a phenomenon that happens which blocks sun, this is really in very simple term, from Earth. So something needs to be in the middle, right? So the moon should be in the middle. So definitely it is a solar eclipse. Now, what about the lunar eclipse? The lunar eclipse is when we stop seeing the moon. So when we stop seeing the moon, because something is blocking the light of the moon from reaching the moon, which is when the Earth becomes between the sun and the moon. Okay? So the correct answer is the lunar eclipse. But yeah, this is one of the questions that it would require that you would know something about the content. Okay? All right, I want to hear from someone else. Some of the challenges. Share with us what you have encountered when you did this question. Anyone? Let's work the question. The sun that a star that suddenly increases in brightness and this disappear from the view. What is the aurora? Do you know what's an aurora? It's a phenomenon that we see where the polars, up in the pole, North Pole. So it's not the one that we need to think of. The galaxy, it's really a mix of stars bundled up together. So we could probably exclude the aurora because it's a phenomenon of colored lights that appear in the sky near the North and the South poles. The galaxy is usually a large group of stars held together by gravity. The black holes are considered like a collapsed stars, their gravitational pull is so strong that the light cannot escape. So we will be left with the last option, which is before the star collapses, the star burns brighter for a period of time and then fades from view in what we call a supernova. So the answer is a supernova. Any questions so far? All right, let's get into life science with the same exact structure and format. If you go to the study plan, it will list the items under life science, okay? And under life science, you will see what topics that you need to focus on and what ideas that you need to go over. And also for each of these ideas that were listed under life science, they have lessons, they do have videos, they do have material or text that you could read to increase your knowledge within that category. So again, you go back and go over the study plan and the study resources. So, are you ready for another exam or another practice?
Yes.
All right, let's do this. This time I have 6 questions. So I'm going to launch the poll for 6 questions. And again, you're going to be very comfortable reading through it and thinking about it. So go over the skills that we have just demonstrated or displayed in how we found the correct answer. Try to use them themselves to find the correct answer. All right. And I'm going to launch the poll and start my timer. All right, you may begin. All right, 1 more minute. Alrighty, I'm gonna end the poll. And it seems like you were more comfortable with life science category than earth science. So it seems like you all got correct answers, I can see from the results. And here are the results to how each one of you responded. So the majority, for instance, picked the desert for a kind of biome and so on and so forth. So you could see how your answers measure in terms of with respect to other participants. So let's see, we're gonna share the same exact tips and how we came to reach this decision of having these questions. So first question, which of these is a biome? All right, who would like to share his or her train of thought thinking about this question?
So for that one,
Mhm.
I knew that biome wasn't going to be an animal because from science classes we learned a lot about the different habitats and things like that, the ecosystems, and I had heard that word learning about ecosystems. So I was like, okay, if I'm gonna look for ecosystems, it's probably not gonna be a herd of bison or a beehive because that's not necessarily a place. And so that gave me cornfield and desert. And you don't really learn about a cornfield in your ecosystem. You may learn about a desert. So I chose that one.
Very good. Thank you, Mia, for sharing. This is very comprehensive. The her way of thinking was exactly by elimination and substitution as well. So the cornfield, she came to look at the cornfield. I was like, there is no way that we will study about the cornfield as a biome. So it's most likely a larger category like the desert. And you are absolutely correct. It is a desert, which is called a biome. And as she said, it's a large ecological community, the biome, that includes specific plants and animals and other biomes you could probably hear about, like rainforests, grasslands, and etc. All right, the second one, which organism has, I don't know, I can't read it, it's cells that contain mitochondria. What do you think? Share your train of thought and how you reached an answer.
Okay, for this one, I had to really go back and think about the two cells, the animals and the plant cells.
Mhm.
And I can recall that the plant cells had some things that the mitochondria didn't, but that was things like cell walls or the chlorophyll that make it green. And then I
Mhm.
remembered that they had a lot that were in common. And so that would be all of the above.
Very good. And do you know what a mitochondria is? Anyone?
Isn't it the energy
Yes.
cell?
Yes, very good, Mia. It is the energy. It's actually the area or the organ in the cell that makes the energy, and it should be in the animal and the plant cell because we both need that energy. So they are found in animal cells, and they are found in plant cells, and they are found in fungi cells. So the correct answer is all of the above, and you are correct. And my mouse is not working properly, so the answer is all of the above. Very good. All right. This was a little bit of a tricky question to me as well, because which organism regulate its body externally? And we all have to regulate the temperature of our bodies. But based on what you have in front of you, how would you tackle this question and come up with the answer closest to being the correct one? Who would like to share?
I'll share for this one.
Go ahead.
Again, of course, I don't know if my answer was correct, but I kind of just looked at all of them and looked at their differences and like what I know about them. And basically, like a lobster, a dolphin, and a whale kind of all live in water.
Mhm.
I'm not necessarily sure, like pelicans do too, I guess, but I don't know. That's so I picked pelican, and
Okay.
I don't know. I'm not sure.
Yeah, which is it is a tricky question, and this is similar to the solar eclipse and the lunar eclipse. If you don't have the content knowledge, you probably can eliminate two, but you will have to pick between the other two. So I would eliminate whales, and I will eliminate dolphins because they are mammals. They are similar to the humans. They regulate their bodies similar to the humans. So they are mammals. Now the choice will be between the lobsters and the birds. The birds are known to be endothermic, so they don't regulate their body externally, and this is an extra piece of content knowledge that you need to have in order for you to complete the answer, to complete the question correctly and come up with the lobster as being the one that regulates the body temperature externally. Okay, so see the difference between multiple questions. Some questions require that piece of knowledge that will probably get you to the correct answer. So the correct answer is the lobster, right? As I said, the birds are endothermic, not exothermic. Let's see the second one. What do you think?
This one confused me a lot too. Um, I just told myself, I was like, yeah, you definitely need to like re-jog your memory of this because I don't really necessarily remember learning this in any of my science classes. And I know we haven't so far in the method science class, but I do remember like class and order.
Mm-hmm.
So I think I kind of took order out because I was like, I like order was in the same thing. So it would be like above or under, but the rest, it threw me for a loop. I
Yeah.
wasn't sure.
And I'm with you on this one. If I'm also answering this question, I'm gonna have to go back and refresh my memory of how they are classified. This is a type of classification, so you right on go back and refresh your memory and read about the classification. But just for your knowledge now, the kingdom is the largest group of living things, and then it's subdivided into smaller groups. And the order is kingdom, phylum, class, order, family, genus, and species. So the correct answer will be based on this phylum, which is the first choice. Okay, but yeah, this is a type of question that would come in the exam, but requires your knowledge of the content. All right, this one, decomposer. Which one is a decomposer? Who would like to share their thinking of this question? What is a decomposer? I think this is where we need to begin. What is a decomposer?
When I think of decomposer, I think of like bacterias and like fungi. So I
Yeah.
know it's not going to be lions because they're carnivores. Goats, I don't, yeah, they're herbivores.
Mhm.
And so my two options were apple trees and mushrooms, and I went with mushrooms.
Very good. And you stated that when I think of decomposers, I think of bacteria and fungi, and a mushroom is a type of fungi. So you are correct. It is the mushroom. The answer is mushroom. And you were correct in answering this question by elimination and while activating your prior knowledge on the topic. Very good. Thank you, Mia. All right, this one. I think all of you got it correctly. What is the correct answer?
Endocrine system.
I couldn't hear you, Rachel. Say that again.
Endocrine system.
Endocrine system, yes. And we know the digestive system, we know the nervous system and circulatory system as well. So the answer is the endocrine system. All right. How do you feel about the life science compared to the earth science?
I feel that I would need to probably, I'm more uncomfortable with that one. So like I feel like even though I got a lot of those right, it was like a guess. So I would really need to work harder on jogging my memory for that section.
Right. And this is what I wanted you to do. After this session, I don't want you to really wait till you go back and refresh your memory. Use the 2 documents that are on ETS website. Go ahead and devise a plan for yourself. Assess your knowledge and the gaps in your knowledge and devise an action plan for you where you want to begin to refresh your knowledge or your memory of the science content. Okay? We're going to do the same now for physical science, and this is personally my favorite topic in science. Again, where I would begin with my study plan. I'll go over the items that Praxis will focus on. These are the categories that the Praxis exam will focus on and will tackle in the exam subtest. I will also go back to the resources on ETS website and click on each of these lessons or content in areas that I'm really not familiar with and I need help with. This is where I would begin. Areas that I am lacking, and I'll go over each one of them, watch them, read them, etc. Make comments in my journal, and this is how you need to prep for the exam. Why you're taking interactive practice exam, timed ones with 55 questions as if you're doing a mock Praxis exam. So these are the areas that are under physical science. And let's see how we're going to practice. Ready to start another practice? We will have also six questions in this. And once you're ready, I'm going to start the timer as well as launch the poll. All right, let's begin. All right, everyone. All right, let me end the poll and I'll share the results. Just take a look at the results. This is how you responded to these questions. And we'll take now a few minutes to share our decision to how we come to decide that this is the correct answer for these questions. All right, so let's begin. The first one, which describes the resistance to motion caused by one object rubbing against another object. We have inertia, friction, velocity, and gravity. What do you think? How did you think of this problem or this question?
Well, it's a resistance to motion, meaning that something is stopping an object from moving. And if it's stopping it, it's not going to be gravity. Well, it's not going to be gravity or velocity. It's going to be either friction or inertia, and it's going to be friction.
Friction. Actually, you pointed really something important. The vocabulary used in the question and the answer really are related to each other. When you talk about resistance, immediately you cause with friction and resistance. So even without thinking of the rest of the items or options, the most obvious response is friction. Do you know what inertia is by any chance?
I've heard of it, but I forgot.
That's like isn't that like it's something with growing. It's a stage of life for something, right? Or no? Am I wrong?
It's actually the object tendency not to change position or direction unless you act on it by a force. So pretty much we're saying all objects will remain unmoved unless you move them. That's the inertia. And the amount of force you exert on that object depends on how heavy or how massive is the object. So that's the inertia. Okay.
I was way
Um,
off.
yeah, but that's fine. It was a good try. Velocity. Do you know the difference between velocity and speed? Just FYI, velocity is a rate. It is pretty much like the speed, but it has a direction. So I can say the speed of the car is 60 miles an hour without indicating where that car is headed. But I could say the velocity of the car is 30 miles per hour heading east. So when you add a direction component from original place or from an X to Y, just take a straight segment from A to B, you're talking about velocity, okay? And of course, the gravity is the force that attracts objects between one another. You could have a gravity between two objects, or you can have the gravity, which is the force that Earth exerts on all of us, on all subjects or objects. So this is the answer is friction. Well done, everyone.
This is kind of random, but now that you said that about velocity, when I see city, I'm thinking, okay, where are they going? So direction, velocity.
Yes. So velocity has a direction. It's a quantity that has a direction. Good connection, Mia. Which tool is used to measure the mass of an object?
Okay, so I use process of elimination because I honestly well, I didn't forget what a balance was, but I just wasn't certain on if it did mass or not. So I knew a thermometer obviously is temperature, and I don't forgot how to pronounce it, but an abacus,
Abacus.
yes, it's like a calculator. So
Right.
I was kind of like, okay, that's not it. And then I remembered a graduated cylinder had something to do. It was like liquid, but like the is that the velocity or volume? Volume.
It is
Maybe.
for volume. You're correct. It is actually a container with some tick marks on it for the mass, and we could use it to measure the mass of an object that does not have a uniform kind of volume, like a rock, for instance, which is difficult to calculate mathematically. So you could use the graduated cylinder.
Yeah. So that's how I picked the balance.
The balance, very good. And it just, I want to point out something that is commonly people confuse between mass and weight. When you talk about balance, in reality, it measures the weight of an object, which is how much force gravity exerts on each of these objects. So when we talk about weight, we're talking about force, but the balance is different. The scale that we use is actually calculating the weight and then calculating the mass. But the balance, you put an item in one of the trays and you put another weight on the other one, and they are usually used with grams, kilograms, or even pounds. So this is how you measure the mass of an object, by using the balance. Very good. All right. Mechanical weathering or mechanical weathering, which is a type of weathering that could happen on Earth. So what do you think? This is a little bit tricky question. How would you come up with the answer to this question?
Okay, I'll take a shot. Was that the correct answer?
Which one?
The one that's highlighted green?
Yes, it is.
Oh, never mind. Never mind.
No,
it's
no,
not
tell me
one.
you're thinking. That's fine. Tell me you're thinking.
So when I thought about this, I saw mechanical, so I was thinking it had something to do with like metal, and so I chose the iron gate rust. But I also was thinking, well, isn't the rust like a chemical reaction? But I just went with it because of metal.
Very good. Thank you, Mia, for sharing this, because you shared a very important key idea here, a very important and key idea, which is when we say mechanical, we tend to think, like you said, something with metal. Okay, it's something that is really related to metal, and the common mistake would be an iron gate rusts. But when we talk about mechanical, we're talking about kind of a physical weathering that is not related. It's opposite to chemical. Okay, so let's go over them. The calcium carbonate reacts with water to form a cave. When we say reacts, we're talking about chemical reaction when calcium carbonate reacts with the acids in the water to form the cave. And as you said, Mia, when the iron gate rusts, it's a type of oxidation, and oxidation is a chemical reaction. And bananas turn brown after they are peeled. This is also oxidation, which is a chemical reaction. So the only possible solution for this question would be the tree roots grow under the foundation of foundation of ours. This is and cause cracks. Okay. Any questions? I am seeing. Okay. Seeing the chat. All right. What about this one?
I put electrons.
Electrons. And I think you probably based it off what you learn about the atom, right?
Yeah, so as a kid, or when I was in science class younger, I remember that my teacher would do like protons was positive and then neutrons was neutral. So electrons were negative or something like that.
Very
So that's
good.
kind of how I remember that.
And this is one type of content knowledge that we have really created over the years and became really common knowledge to us. And you will have some questions like this in the Praxis. So they are simple, you know of them. No one can make an error coming to a question like this. But they're not all the questions. So you have also to use what you know before about test taking tips and what you know before about your content area in science. All right, what about this one? Pressure. Which unit measures pressure?
was a little confused when trying to answer this question because I had to figure out what unit measure went with what type of measuring. I knew it wasn't kilometers because I know that has to deal with distance, and I knew grams had to do with weight. I didn't know
Mass.
what mass. I didn't know what grams per second had to deal with, so I decided to cross that one out, and I went with pounds per square foot.
Very good. Sound thinking, Rachel. Grams per second, it's the rate of change in the mass. Grams per second. So as if you have maybe a pound of sugar and you're taking some sugar out of it at a certain rate, which is maybe half a gram per 2 minutes, for instance. Okay. So that's the grams per second. It's a rate of change, which you were correct in eliminating because it's not really a quantity. It's more like a rate. And kilometer, you have mentioned that it measures length, so it's definitely not kilometers, and it's not grams because it measures mass in a balance. We could use the balance to measure the grams, so it's pounds per square foot. Now, to me, when I tackled this question, I know the idea of pressure is something that exerts on an area of a kind, or a force on an area of a kind. That's the definition of pressure. And when we say a force, I'm talking about weight, which is pound, square foot, which is the area that this force is exerting or putting pressure on. So that's how I came to solve this question, just based on my prior knowledge of the topic. Very good. All right, this one. Which example demonstrates a refraction? This one requires an understanding of what refraction is. So how did you come up with an answer to this question?
I was really lost with this one because I couldn't necessarily use my context clues to figure out what refraction meant. I ended up picking mirror because I kind of felt like it had to kind of do with like reflection or like something to do with seeing. But I was also torn between echo and radio. I don't know why I crossed out rainbow, but I just didn't think that was it.
Yeah, which I appreciate you sharing your challenge with the topic, because as I said, this question requires you to be aware of what refraction is. So if we talk about reflection, it is the light bouncing off a circle, like the mirror, light bouncing off, or the idea of bouncing off is reflection. The echo is the bouncing off the sound waves. So we have also bounce off of sound waves. The mirror uses the bouncing off the light waves. So these two are similar. That's why we could eliminate them. So we will be left with the radio and finally the rainbow. The radio is an example of sound waves reflecting off the layers of the earth. So the way that sound waves, the way that radio waves move is from the transmission, or the transmission station, bounces off the earth layer and then coming to a reception station. So it's also using the idea of reflection of sound of radio waves. So we will be left with the rainbow. The rainbow uses the refraction of light, which is the bend of the light. Refraction is the bending of the light waves, okay? And a common phenomenon to it, when you try to pick up something from the water, like if you're fishing and you want to fish from the water, the fish will appear a little bit closer to the water than it is in reality, just simply because of the bending of the light. So it's going to look as if it's at a different location in the water. So the correct answer is the rainbow. And I want you to know also another piece of information here. The white light has the rainbow color, the 7 rainbow colors, and they are bundled up all together. When they come through a prism, in this case, the raindrop, They refract, they bend at different angles, so they spread out and we would see the rainbow. They are bundled up as a white light and we see only the white light. They could only separate when they are refracted at different angles, and this is why we see the seven colors of the rainbow. Okay, so this is how rainbow appears or happen. This is just FYI. All right, great work, everyone. Nice job. And I hope that helped a little bit familiarize you with how the test will look like. Let's just remember a few of the tips that we have used. If you encounter a difficult question, you have plenty of time, so don't feel anxious. Leave that hard question and go on. Read the questions closely and read all the possible questions thoroughly, okay? And make sure you use these tips that we have used in our session today. The process of elimination or substitution, or even if you read any question before, something that would be a good tip for that question, use it as well. Use all your energy. Don't show any frustration, just be calm and quiet. And I always suggest and advise my students really not to do any kind of prepping or studying for the exam 2 to 3 hours before the test. Just sit back and relax, take a walk, just sit down and probably enjoy some slow music. Just try to clear your mind before you get into the test. Okay? Keep checking your answers. Make sure you answer all questions regardless of whether you know the answer or not. Don't leave any question blank. And keep track of the time. This is a little bit less paramount in the science, just simply because you will have ample of time to go over each of these questions. Okay? Any questions, any comments, or something you would like to share with us? All right, I like your feedback, as I always do, even with my classes. I'm gonna put a Google form in the chat box. If you would just take a few minutes to respond to it. And while we're doing so, I can receive any of questions or maybe personal challenge you would like to share with us. I'll give you a few minutes to complete the form. And if you do, when you complete the form, please go back to the study plan that you downloaded off the ATS website and try to, based on the exams that we took now or the practice exam that we took now, try to indicate the areas that you would like to begin with familiarizing yourself with the science content. Take a few minutes to complete that study plan. Check on your next action plan. What do you want to do and where do you want to begin? And I would suggest that you keep it, excuse me, you keep thinking of prepping for the Praxis exam as something on your schedule, constantly on your schedule. So maybe you want to pace your prepping schedule to be every 2 days. You will sit down and do one content prepping or one category prepping, whether it's reading or watching a video or even looking at the study plan and allocate the next item to go on your schedule. Do that consistently and pace it according to, of course, your work schedule and your school schedule. Don't wait for a long period of time before you get back to prepping and reading science content. And that applies to any of the subtests that you are prepping for: math, science, social studies. Keep them on your schedule so you are constantly reading and making connections between multiple concepts and multiple content skills. Okay. Any questions, anyone?
You might have already mentioned this earlier, but how many minutes or hours do you recommend that we try to get in? Because I am having trouble between my coursework and work trying to figure out how much should I be putting in.
Well, that's a good question, Mia. And honestly, I think I could relate to this as well, because each and every one of us is trying to fit something different within the schedule. You probably can determine the best that works with you. Um, I can share with you, for instance, my writing. I try to write 15 minutes every day as opposed to 2 to 3 hours once a week. So in my opinion, if you do small increments consistently, you will probably benefit from it more than when you sit and allocate 4 to 5 hours just for science content studying. So if you have a couple of days during the week that your schedule is not that tight and a little bit flexible and you have room to work on it, just have an hour maybe during that day, go over some of the content, read, make notes and whatever, and so on and so forth. That would be my suggestion. At least this works for me better than just having a larger chunk of time allocated for prepping for the exam. Does that make sense?
Yes, I'm gonna try to do like smaller increments. That might be better for me.
It works also for